The danger of trying to fit in. A conversation about authenticity, courage, and being unapologetically yourself. Have you ever walked into a room and felt that quiet pressure to become someone else? Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone could easily notice. Just small adjustments. You laugh a little differently. You soften your opinions. You hide certain passions. You lower your voice. You dim your light. And before you even realize it, you are no longer fully there. Almost everyone has experienced this, because deep inside the human brain lives a powerful need, the need to belong. But here is the uncomfortable truth that psychology, neuroscience, and real-life experience keep revealing. Trying to fit in can slowly disconnect you from who you really are. And the cost of that disconnection is far greater than most people realize. The human brain is wired for belonging. Humans evolved in tribes. For most of human history, being rejected by the group was dangerous. Being excluded could mean losing protection, food, and survival itself. So the brain developed an intense sensitivity to social approval. Psychologists call this normative social influence, the tendency to conform to a group simply to avoid rejection and gain acceptance. In other words, people often change their behavior not because the group is right, but because they don't want to stand alone. One of the most famous demonstrations of this came from the psychologist Solomon Asch. In the 1950s, Asch conducted experiments where participants were asked to compare the length of simple lines, an easy task, with an obvious answer. But there was a twist. Everyone else in the room had secretly been instructed to give the wrong answer, and something remarkable happened. About 1/3 of participants knowingly agreed with the wrong answer simply because the group said it first. Think about that. People saw the truth with their own eyes, yet still went along with the group. Not because they were confused, because they didn't want to stand out. Now imagine doing that not for a moment, but for years. Pretending to be someone else requires constant emotional effort. You monitor your words, you censor your ideas, you edit your personality. Psychologists often describe this as self-suppression, and research has linked it to increased stress, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. Why? Because the brain is forced to maintain two versions of reality: the person you really are, the person you think people will accept. That internal conflict drains energy. And eventually people begin to feel something strange. Loneliness. Even in a crowd. Because if people only know the mask, they never truly know you. The loneliness of fitting in. Here's the paradox that many people eventually discover. Fitting in does not create belonging. It creates performance. You perform the right personality, you perform the right opinions, you perform the right identity. But real belonging only happens when the performance ends. When someone sees the real you and says, "You belong here exactly as you are." That kind of connection cannot exist if the real person is hidden. So ironically, the more someone tries to fit in, the harder true belonging becomes. The creativity crisis of conformity. Trying to fit in doesn't only hurt emotionally. It also limits creativity and innovation. History makes this clear. Almost every major breakthrough came from someone who refused to think like everyone else. Scientists, artists, inventors, visionaries. But conformity discourages exactly the qualities that lead to discovery: curiosity, questioning, imagination, originality. When people fear standing out, they stop sharing unusual ideas. They stop asking uncomfortable questions. They stop experimenting. And when a culture becomes too focused on fitting in, progress slows down. Psychologists sometimes refer to this phenomenon as herd mentality, where individuals adopt beliefs or behaviors simply because others are doing so. The crowd moves together, but rarely in new directions. When fitting in becomes dangerous, the pressure to conform doesn't only influence opinions, it can influence behavior. Young people often start smoking, drinking, or experimenting with drugs because they want to belong. Adults stay in toxic workplaces because they fear judgment. People remain silent when something is wrong because they don't want to challenge the group. History itself contains dark examples of what happens when conformity overrides conscience. Because once enough people follow the crowd, even harmful behaviors can begin to feel normal. That is the hidden danger of group pressure. It can convince ordinary people to ignore their own values. Neuroscience has discovered something fascinating. Social rejection doesn't just feel painful metaphorically. It actually activates the same brain regions involved in physical pain. Studies using brain imaging have shown that when people experience social exclusion, areas such as the anterior cingulate cortex become active, the same region triggered during physical injury. This helps explain why people go to extreme lengths to avoid rejection. Your brain literally treats exclusion like harm. But there is a problem. When the fear of rejection becomes too strong, people begin sacrificing authenticity for safety. And when authenticity disappears, life slowly loses its sense of meaning. The hidden cost: losing yourself. Perhaps the greatest danger of trying to fit in is subtle. You begin forgetting who you actually are. Your preferences change, your interests fade, your voice becomes quieter. You stop asking what you want and start asking what everyone else expects. Over time, something powerful gets buried: your individuality, your creativity, your unique perspective. But here is something important to remember. The things that make you different are often the exact things that make you valuable. Standing out is uncomfortable, but necessary. Being authentic is not always easy. Standing out can feel awkward. Sometimes it means being misunderstood. Sometimes it means being criticized. Sometimes it means walking alone for a while. But every person who has ever changed the world had to accept one truth: different people create different futures. If everyone thinks the same, nothing new happens, and the world doesn't move forward. Authenticity attracts the right people. One of the most powerful shifts happens when people stop trying to be liked by everyone. Instead, they choose to be real. Something interesting happens then. Some people will not resonate with you anymore. And that is okay. Because the people who do resonate with you will finally be connecting with the real person. Authenticity filters relationships. It removes shallow connections, and it strengthens meaningful ones. Instead of being accepted for a mask, you are appreciated for your truth. Your difference is not a flaw. Many people spend years trying to fix what makes them different: their personality, their ideas, their energy. But often the thing you are told to tone down is the very thing that makes you powerful. Your originality, your passion, your voice, your creativity. The world does not need more copies. It needs more people brave enough to be themselves. A simple truth to remember: you were never meant to fit perfectly into someone else's mold. You were meant to create your own shape. So if you have always felt like you didn't quite blend into the crowd, that might not be a weakness. It might be a sign that you were never designed to disappear into the background. You were designed to stand out, to create, to inspire, to challenge, to be unapologetically yourself. And when you finally stop trying to fit in, something remarkable happens. You stop shrinking to be accepted and start expanding into who you were always meant to become.